Good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy holidays and all that good stuff. It's been a while since we have seemingly last connected, but we are so excited to be here, me and Miss Sage. For those who don't know, I am Whitney Middlebrooks. I am the Family Self Sufficiency Program Coordinator at the Lexington Housing Authority. And Miss Sage Chioma is over the Boss Initiative. And again, we are just excited to be here, ushering in the new year, good vibes. New possibilities, new opportunities. And we're just excited to speak about the year ahead. You know, there's been an interesting year thus far, even last 2 years, but nonetheless, we're still here. We're still progressing at some point. We still have to move forward. Sometimes we can stand still a bit, but it is important to continue to move forward and figure out how we can figure out what is the best for us as an agency with the Housing Authority, best for us as the Family Self Sufficiency Program, as we have gained several new participants. And I'm super excited about that over the last few months. Also, too, we are just grateful to want to give a huge thank you and special thanks to all of our speakers who have participated within our workshop series over the last year. We've had some amazing speakers, so many different topics, saying yes to healthy relationships, change made is easy, financial information. We just, again, we want to ramp it up. We want to know what you all want. So we definitely want to get your feedback. We want you to comment, interact with us so we can figure out what is the best way we can move forward as well as we progress in 2022. So without further delay, I'm going to have Miss Sage introduce herself again for those who don't know, and this is your first time tuning in. So go ahead, Miss Sage, and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Sage Chioma, and I am the coordinator for B.O.S.S Initiative, which is the acronym for Building Our Success Stories. And we try and offer information that's applicable and practical to everyday life so that you can use some of the information for things like self care or how to plan your finances or learn about financial literacy on some level. As Whitney said, we have had some great presenters. Today, we're just going to talk a little bit more and broaden our scope about the previous year. We're going to review some of the things that impacted all of us, and then we'll spend just a little time talking about the year ahead and what's required of us and what these sessions will be able to offer in 2021.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Sage. We're going to go right into our presentation. Again, this is the year in review and facing the year ahead. So, Sage, if you want to go ahead and take it away.
Yes. So when we think about the year in review, I want to say I'm talking about the entire nation, not just what's happening with just the Lexington Housing Authority, Lexington, Greensboro, Charlotte, North Carolina, but all of us, because all of the things have been very challenging to say the least. And the bright side of it, as challenging as it lets us all know that we're all in this together. So last year, 2020, the pandemic gave us a panoramic view of many things that were challenging, things that were really hard for us to face. And when it came to the pandemic, we know that it left a lot of grief and loss because there was loss of life. Also, it caused us to have to rely heavily on our medical professionals who rose to the challenge as heroes, and it also impacted the mental health of our families, our children, and it left us with a lot of questions. We also know that in the height of all of that, there was many or much civil unrest due to what happened with George Floyd. And people came out of their homes in record numbers, even having been told to quarantine. People wanted to exercise their civil rights and civil duty and liberties to protest. So we got a panoramic view also of health disparities and how people who were poorer might be impacted compared to people who were more well off. So it gave us a panoramic view. So, some of the good things that came out of 2020, I want to touch on because we know about all of the things that challenged us: COVID, the deaths, the mental illness or anxiety provoking things. But I want to touch on some of the good things. And one was that 57 million ballots were cast. 2020 was a time in which more people voted than ever before in recent years in this nation's history. That was one of the things. We also know that the carbon emissions, that it decreased all around the world. And what was really something that people noted is how certain fish who had not been in certain waters came back to the waters, certain waters that weren't clear. Smog in California almost disappeared. And we started to see nature actually start to heal some of the things that were problematic before. We also got to see how America made history by electing the first female president, vice president of the United States, also the first Black vice president and Asian vice president. So we as a nation got to check all three boxes by electing Vice President Kamala Harris. People engage with nature more often. I don't know about you. Whitney, you might want to chime in, but I started to go for walks in the park. And I started seeing how many families were out with their kids and people just deciding to just take walks together. Whitney, did you notice anything around that?
I can't say that I personally went out more in the nature, but I can say that I did. I saw more of people doing that. I saw more people hiking. Like I saw people posting on Facebook. And I think it was because with limited things that you probably could do in terms of socially, that was the one thing they really couldn't take away is actually kind of being out in nature and enjoying yourself with your family, your friends, or even just by yourself, in parks. And actually, I'm gonna take that back. I did find myself going to a lake here where I'm at, and I just went out, and I never go to the lake. So those are things with the pandemic and with 2021 kind of pushed me more to do. It's just enjoying like the nature and enjoying what's outside, because after a while you get stuck inside. You really want to get out in any way, form, or fashion. So yeah, I can say that I did do that.
Thank you, because it's really important. I remember being in New York for 9/11 when that happened, and we were told, at that time by the mayor and by the president, don't let them win, don't let the economy crash, make sure you go out and shop and buy things. And I did that. I went to the mall and it was like Christmas. The parking lot was filled. It was so many people there. And I don't know, this small little voice said, this what is wrong with this picture? And I decided to go to the park instead. And there were people in the park in record numbers as well. And the thing about it is we all gave each other eye contact when passing, because if you know anything about New Yorkers, they're always in a rush, and usually they're not saying hi, they're just going wherever they're going. But when people said, how are you, they actually listened for the answer and was present. And I think that also happened during COVID. People were more present and caring about, how is your family doing, how are you getting through this, how are the children. So that was one of the good things, that we engaged with nature, which is very serene and relaxing, and it's some great um, antidote to anxiety, and there are no side effects. The other great thing is that scientists discovered a coronavirus vaccine. And there has been much controversy around the vaccine. We also know that the CDC has a lot of new guidelines and protocols. So I think moving forward in 2021, we will definitely devote one of our trainings to a public health, issue, and something that's really informative to keep people aware of COVID, the vaccines, what resources are available, because it changes from day to day. But that is one of the great things that occurred. And our nation, we can be proud, is leading in a lot of ways with the research and the availability of the vaccines. But the basics we can't get away from, and some people have a lot of controversy just around something as simple as wearing a mask. There's controversy around if the vaccines are safe or if they were rushed, and because they were released for emergency use in the beginning. We can work through all of those things, and it is a personal choice if a person gets vaccinated or not. And when in public spaces, we want to honor what the state is asking us to do. So no matter where you go, where you live in America, there are certain states that mandate, there are certain states that do not. And those are things that we can unpack when we look, because sometimes I do like to look at what is the trend across the nation, because that trend can be followed up by research, which will show you the numbers of cases, the numbers of hospitalizations compared to the number of deaths. So, what we do know is that Omicron is the latest variant that has swept across the nation, and it has, though it is more contagious, the good news is the fatalities and hospitalizations have decreased with that particular virus. So the three W's for me, I can know Whitney will probably vouch for this. I wear a mask because I go to the gym, I go certain places where I'm in a public gathering. And I go to the stores. I am a person, if I'm vaccinated, I don't want to be non-symptom, or how do you say, unsymptomatic. Um, and I go in and I don't know that I'm spreading it. I try to do 6 feet. I don't always think consciously of it, but the stores still have things. And I wash my hands and I have sanitizer in my car. So that's just something I can do to protect myself and others, because there's so much with this that I'm powerless over. Whitney, you want to add anything?
I think you pretty much said it all as it relates to wearing a mask. I try my best to social distance as much as possible. Sometimes it's not always, you may not have that option depending on where you are, but I'm definitely conscious of it. I've always watched a lot, so that's really never changed. But definitely just being conscious and aware of where I'm at, and making sure that I'm protecting myself and others.
Yes. And I try to, instead of weaving webs of controversy, I try to take personal responsibility, because I'm in a space where other people have a choice to wear a mask or not. And so if I'm doing what I can to protect myself and others, I don't have to engage in controversy or trying to control what other people are doing. And I think that's really helpful in a time such as this, because one thing for sure, none of us want to add to the problem. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. So when we look at the year in review of 2021, I'm going to say the year in review, the biggest thing, which is why it's here on this screen, is January 6th, 2021. And I put that there because I understand that if my neighbor is unhappy or my neighbor is hurting, it will affect everyone else in the neighborhood. It'll affect me, it'll affect their families. So January 6th, 2021 gave the nation a bird's eye view of just how much people are hurting, how much people are feeling left behind, how much people have a very limited capacity to practice or even an awareness of emotional competency, because there are many things that might affect you adversely. And the way in which you express it, or the way in which you actually try to work through those negative emotions, feelings, or challenges, you're either a part of the problem or a part of the solution. But if you don't have the skills, or the bandwidth. You've reached a level where you have no tolerance at all and you just snap. It affects each and every one of us. And that was my takeaway. Because my takeaway from circumstances and historical events is always to unite and not divide. My takeaway from historical events is to learn so we don't repeat. And my takeaway from historical events, especially now, is who knew that the things that we prayed for, or the things that we were troubled by, or the things that we thought we had overcome would actually, it would be in our lifetime that we really have the opportunity to overcome. So, that is really my takeaway from it. And I'll have more if Whitney wants to add anything to what I just said.
I won't add too much due to my own personal beliefs. This was very, if we're speaking about the year ahead and the year in review, this was very tough for me. I actually remember being home, working from home that day, and I never really watched CNN because I have my own personal views from just my own mental health of staying away from some things from the news. And I remember I was just watching that and I saw this live, right, as it was happening. And I remember being completely confused and upset and what is going on. So I'll just share that we learned from this, right? But it was still very truly kind of traumatic to watch. To see all of this unfold. And I think we'll be remiss if we don't say that there was a real uproar around what actually took place. So, and as we talk about the year in review, I think those feelings are real. I think if we're feeling perhaps adversely to something and upset about what we're seeing, because this was a major thing that happened in our country. This hasn't happened in that way. It was pretty traumatic for me to watch and very upsetting to see this. So I'm still working through those feelings. I can be honest about it. And I think it's fair, people watching, it's okay to have those feelings because that was pretty, it was a very negative thing that happened. It wasn't a good thing, you know. This wasn't, I guess there's a freedom of speech, but this was pretty tough to watch. So I'll
Thank
share
you.
that.
I really appreciate that because that's why I always look at my takeaways from a circumstance or situation. And when you mentioned the word trauma, obviously it left and impacted trauma. But what I am aware of is just the way the COVID gave us a panoramic view of what was just beneath the surface, whether it was access to healthcare or our healthcare system being, something so fragile. This allowed us to see how fragile our democracy is. It allowed us to see how fragile some people are that we actually have given a great deal of credibility as far as how do they handle stress or how do they handle pressure. So it revealed a lot, and always trying to practice emotional competence myself, knowing that I have dealt with anxiety, depression, and things that most people are experiencing now. Um, Coming off of the amount of loss of life from COVID, the last thing any of us needed was this because it compounded the hurt that people individually were experiencing. And so I really respect you, Whitney, for saying I'm still working through this. The next slide, just since you brought it up, is a perfect segue, is into trauma informed communities. There is a big push for us to teach social emotional learning in schools now so that we teach our children to be emotionally competent adults so that when things don't go their way, they look for strategies instead of just acting out in ways that are destructive. And so if parents can develop these skills within themselves, then they can teach them to their children. Also, we know that our children have been traumatized greatly by the amount of violence that has occurred in as little and short a time from January to now, whether it's school shootings. So you have adverse childhood experiences, but now we have adverse community experiences, and COVID being the big one that we all have encountered. And then after January 6th, we see that our communities are not as resilient as they need to be. And so when we look at what happened that day, we can truly say that we have our work cut out for us in 2021. And part of my goal that I always want people to jump on the bandwagon with is to create a sane and just world where everyone feels good about who they are. Because a lot of times, what we see as hatred is really projection. What we see as anger is really projection. And a lot of perpetrators of violence are also traumatized, just like the victim is traumatized. And so a lot of this is reenacted trauma that has gone unresolved and unaddressed in our culture. So, trauma informed communities making people aware that resilience requires that you develop certain skills. And one skill is we talk about it often. Whitney has led it, and I have led it, and that's self care. You know, what is it that you do for yourself when you are carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders or you turn on the news? So, moving forward, we're going to be talking more and more about post traumatic growth syndrome because sometimes the situation that you went through, it's horrific. You didn't want to experience it, but as a result of it, you know that saying, if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger. And so, as a result of it, you become a more resilient person with more resources. And maybe the next slide, we can come through with more. I'm missing something. It did not allow that to go. Okay. That was a very powerful slide that I had there. You can turn it off now. There it goes. So if we can come through with more empathy, compassion, equity, healing, love, unity, grace, understanding, and benevolence for the next person. Because I really am not saying it because it just sounds good to create a sane and just world where everyone feels good about who they are. But every month that we meet here, we are bringing people who are doing great work. They're doing great work by teaching people who never had financial literacy the opportunity to learn how to understand and manage credit or how to budget on a very limited income. You know, we have people coming here that are talking about intentional parenting and the importance of parenting with the intention of really learning about how difficult it is to parent in the age of technology. What are some of the safety, and as Whitney teaches, social media etiquette? So these are things that are 20 years ago didn't plague us, but they do now. And they provide opportunities for us to crack it open, you know, to really unpack it and see where the solution lies. Margaret Mead, and I'll end with this, said that when you thoroughly examine the problem, the solution will present itself. And so, by being honest and open and forthcoming, like Whitney was when she talked about it's okay to have these feelings, by being able to dialogue on that level, we come up with solutions and become more solution oriented and understand that even us professionals have to think about these words we don't use often, like love, empathy, compassion. These are the things that the professionals are going to have to bring back into their lexicon if they are going to serve the community adequately.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Paige, for that presentation. It was so good to kind of go over what we've talked about. I want to make a point that it was supposed to say 2022, as we, you know how it is when the new year you get confused, or is it you still used to saying the previous year? So I just want to say that. But I think as we move forward, it's definitely good to think about new opportunities, new mindsets, shifting ourselves, and it is a lot that we've been through. But how can we move past? How can we do something different? How can we at least change the environment that we can, or control what, or change what we can actually control? So I think that's so important. We always talk about, affirmations, and we didn't get to kind of touch base before the end of the year, but I think those vision boards are definitely important. Hopefully soon, I don't know, we could get back and have that workshop of having that vision board. That was pretty good, Sage. That we did. Was that, did we actually do that in 2021?
We
I
did
can't.
that in
2020.
2019.
No,
Um,
2020. I think it must have been.
no, because 20 by the time was it February of
It was
2020 that we did it?
2020 because that's when we had just, everything had shut down right after that. So yeah, so I'm mentioning that because we are hoping to get back out and being able to have more in-person workshops. If not, this is how we're going to communicate for a little while. Again, this is one of our new norms. We just have to take it as we can. We are hoping to get back in the community, as we did last year, with some food trucks, some community days, community enrollment days. That's always a good way to touch base and actually see us face to face and ask any questions about Family Self Sufficiency Program or the B.O.S.S initiative, and how to get enrolled and how to participate. So be sure to look out for all these things. If you're watching on YouTube or you're watching on Facebook, subscribe. Subscribe for notifications that you don't miss anything from us, any posts. And we'll also be sharing other things, that I'll be sharing things related to the agency as well as updates and changes. Again, this is our new norm. We are doing things very remote, but me and Sage are excited to figure out some more innovative ways, right, to connect, and how to um, help and assist in any way that we can as it relates to um, any type of workshop or motivational or inspiration per se. We're always looking for that. So, anything you want to end on, or closing notes? No. Okay. Okay. Again, thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back next month. We're gonna every month we're gonna have something new. Again, stay tuned. I'll post what that topic will be about, if we'll have a special speaker or not. But we're looking forward to 2022 being an amazing year, and us being able to take one day at a time, and just get some new fresh energy going on in 2022. Thank you all. Have a wonderful afternoon.